Hey everyone, my name is Rocky Meyer, and this is our Black Hills home. In this one-day build video, we're finally going to tackle some of my scrap wood storage by building this rolling wood rack. So, let's get started. So my current wood storage consists of a bunch of scrap plywood stacked up against the wall, and more miscellaneous plywood and boards on this hanging shelf I made 7 years ago, and a ton of scrap tucked away up in the rafters. One good thing about having all this scrap is that I only had to buy one sheet of plywood for this project, and the rest of the wood I used was just stuff I had laying around, including the bottom piece of plywood from this old hanging shelf. So before I could start building, I had to remove all the wood from the shelf and dismantle it. After finessing the plywood down, I stacked it up next to all the other sheets that I was going to use and numbered them, each number corresponding to the different pieces needed for this project. Once my materials were all sorted out, I needed to start breaking them down. When using scrap, it's always a good idea to make sure that the edge you're measuring off is straight and square. After confirming that I had the factory edge and that it was square to the other sides, I made my first marks of many. Then I used my homemade track saw to make the first cut. This old door board, as it's sometimes called, works great for making nice straight cuts quickly. However, it is set up for my corded circular saw, which annoyingly can get caught on the clamp, or as it did here, in between the door board and the piece of wood I was cutting. I'm thinking it might be time to build a new one for my cordless saw, or maybe I should just bite the bullet and buy an actual track saw. Let me know if you would be interested in a video on how to make your own door board. I continue breaking down the plywood pieces with my circular saw. Some of these pieces include the base panel, the main back panel, and the wood bin dividers, which you can see here I had to freehand cut to maximize the yield of this one sheet. Once I had everything broken down with my circular saw, I wheeled out my new DeWalt table saw and began cutting some of the smaller pieces to size. Some of you that have seen my previous videos might be wondering what happened to my old Delta table saw. I still have it, but I am planning on selling it here soon. Stay tuned for my next video where I will have more details on why I'm selling it and why I bought this DeWalt table saw. Here I'm making the diagonal cuts for the bin dividers. I then use my chop saw to cut the 2x4 base pieces down to size, as well as the shelves and the shelf support strips. Then I dug out my old Craig pocket hole jig and began drilling out all of the pocket holes I'll be using to hold this rack together. The new table saw also works great as a makeshift workbench, as my workbench is currently a disaster. For the bigger pieces that needed pocket holes, I used this handy R3 portable pocket hole jig. I bought this a while back, and I find myself using it way more often than I thought I would. In the video description, I have an Amazon link to this tool, as well as some of the other materials and tools I've used in this build. Finally, I have everything cut to size, and after a quick sweep, I'm ready to start the assembly. Like most assemblies, I started with the base. I laid out my 2x4 structure, which consists of two 6-foot 2x4s attached by three smaller 21-inch long 2x4s. This gave me my desired footprint of 6 foot by 28 inches. You may be wondering why 28 inches? I don't know. 2 foot didn't seem wide enough, but 3 foot seemed too wide. So 28 it is. This is probably a good time to mention that this is not my design. After watching many other wood rack slash cart videos, the one I thought worked best for my needs and space was designed by Travis at Shop Nation. I bought his plans, and although I've taken some liberties with the size and assembly methods, it is nonetheless his design. That being said, if you would like plans for this wood rack, I've included a link in the description to the Shop Nation website where you can purchase Travis's original plans. Now, while I was given that long-winded disclosure, you probably noticed that I screwed the base sheet of plywood to the 2x4 structure. Then I marked out where the main back panel needs to be attached to the base, and then I attached the first divider. Now I'm just marking out where the inside 3 dividers need to be. With my markings, I can now attach the remaining 4 dividers. Or so I thought. This is when I realized that I needed 5 dividers, but I only cut out 4. After a quick look at the plans, I decided that I could probably get by with just 3 bins instead of 4. Now that I had all the dividers up, I could install the main back panel. I first lined up the panel with the edge of the cart, and I used a clamp on the one side to temporarily hold the panel up. Then quickly secured a pocket screw on the other side. Then I followed that up with 5 more pocket screws on the back side, all while using my foot to make sure that the panel is firmly against the dividers on the other side. I secured the remaining pocket screws on the 2 end dividers. Then using a speed square, I squared the 2 middle dividers up and drew a line. This helped keep the middle dividers square as I finished screwing them off. To install the front of the bins, I decided to tip the rack on its side. One of my toolboxes and a 2x4 worked perfect to keep the rack flat. Then I aligned the front sheet and put a few screws along the base. This did cause the front to pull away from the dividers a bit, but I just pushed it back against the bin dividers and drilled a few countersink pilot holes since these screws would be going directly into the end grain of the dividers. I just used regular wood screws to finish securing the front of the bin dividers, and once secured, I flipped the rack back upright. Here I am measuring the location of the 4 middle shelves. I am locating these shelves exactly where the plans say they should be. This could become an issue because the shelves are each a different width to allow a slight slope towards the back. This slope will keep the stored pieces of plywood from tipping off of the rack. However, if the shelves aren't perfectly aligned, there could be a gap between some of the shelves and the 4 support strips that hold them up. I attached the top shelf first and worked my way down, making sure that the shelves were right on the lines that I had laid out. Each of the shelves will be attached to the main back panel via several pocket screws. This all went pretty smooth until As you can see, I tightened that last pocket screw just a bit too tight and it split the plywood. This is just the downside to using plywood that's been sitting around for a long time. No worries though, I just busted out the old Craig R3 again and added another pocket hole a few inches down from the split. Before installing the shelf support straps, I decided to throw on this little strip on the edge of the cart just to keep the pieces of plywood from slipping off the rack when moving it around. I left the shelf support straps long on purpose. I figured it would be a lot easier to lay the pieces on the rack and use a square to mark the exact length of each piece. This ended up working out great. Before I could attach the support straps, I needed to mark out the locations of the two middle straps. This way they'll be straight and evenly spaced out. This is also a good time to make sure that the shelves are square with the main back panel. To attach the straps, I'm using a combination of wood glue, pin nails, and screws. Remember earlier when I said if the shelves aren't perfectly laid out, there would be a gap? The top three lined up pretty good, but for some reason the bottom one was off by quite a bit. Nothing a little hand clamping and pin nails can't fix though. I continued temporarily attaching the other three support straps with pin nails. I followed that up by countersinking a hole where each of the shelves met the four straps. Again, pre-drilling all the holes since they would be going straight into the end grain of the shelves. Then I added all the wood screws, and between the glue, pin nails, and screws, I'm not really worried about these ever coming loose. Once again, I use pocket screws to attach the bottoms of the straps to the base. While still on its side, I pre-drilled some holes and screwed the casters onto the cart. 6 casters should be plenty to support the weight and still be able to move around the shop. For the last time, I flipped the rack back upright and gave it the customary spin test, which it passed with ease. The only thing left to do on this project was sort through all the scraps, most of which I'm throwing out. Trigger warning for you fellow wood hoarders. Then I loaded the new rack up with the wood I'm keeping. As always, I'm really happy with how this shop project turned out, and honestly, I'm excited to have all of my scrap wood in one place and on wheels. Well, that's a wrap on this rolling wood rack, and it's really nice to have this marked off on my to-do list. To be honest with you, I was kind of debating whether I actually wanted to post this video. There's already a lot of videos out there about rolling wood racks, and I'm really not reinventing the wheel. So if you liked this video or you like the idea of the one-day build videos, definitely leave a comment down below. I'd really like to see your feedback. I'm hoping to post a few more videos this year, so if you liked this one, definitely give it a like and subscribe to my channel. As always, thanks for watching.